Together, these numbers describe an agency that is firing on all cylinders, driven by the extraordinary work of the men and women of the NYPD. I want to be clear. These are not incremental gains. They are historic outcomes. Before I get into the data, I want to thank Governor Hochul for being here with us today. Her presence is a symbol of the true partner that she has been to this department, committed to the mission, supportive of the cops, and focused on the results. When federal funding for our counterterrorism programs came under threat, she fought to protect it. She invested in public safety across the city, and those investments have helped produce so many of the 2025 results that we will cover today. I also want to thank Mayor Mamdani, to whom I report directly, and with whom I am developing a close and productive working relationship. I look forward to working with him to continue to drive down crime in 2026. Now let's get into the 2025 crime numbers, starting with shootings. In 2025, New York City recorded 688 shooting incidents, the lowest number in the city's history. That didn't just break the previous record set in 2018, it shattered it, with 66 fewer shootings than that benchmark year. Compared to 2024, shooting incidents fell by 216 citywide. That is a 24% reduction. They fell 36% in the fourth quarter of 2025, and in the month of December, shootings fell 43% with just 35 shooting incidents citywide. That is the lowest number of shootings ever in any month of the year, beating the previous record of 36 shooting incidents set in February of 2018. We see the headlines and we hear the pundits talk about crime being out of control in our city. These numbers tell a very different story. To put all of this into perspective, in 2025, we halved Chicago's more than 1,400 shooting incidents, despite having roughly 3 times the population. And we have Philadelphia's shooting total as well, despite having more than 5 times the population. This underscores just how far New York City has pushed gun violence down at a scale unlike any other city in the country. And it puts this moment into historical context. For decades, people have pointed to the early 1990s as the moment New York City turned the corner on gun violence, years that have been studied and written about. What is striking is that the drop in shootings from 2024 to 2025 was of a similar magnitude. Given all of this, it should come as no surprise that the number of people shot in New York City also fell to historic lows in 2025, with 856 shooting victims citywide. That is 41 fewer people shot than the previous record year of 2018. Compared to 2024, shooting victims declined by 247 citywide, a 22% reduction. That progress accelerated at the end of the year. In the fourth quarter, shooting victims fell by more than 34%, with December posting the lowest victim totals ever recorded for that month. And compared to 2021, 1,021 fewer people were shot in New York City in 2025. Those historic reductions in shooting incidents and victims weren't confined to a single part of the city. They were reflected across all 5 boroughs. Manhattan saw the steepest decline in shootings in 2025, down 38% year over year. The Bronx, Queens, and Staten Island each saw drops of roughly 25% or more. Brooklyn also saw a significant decline, with shootings down 15% below the previous benchmark set in 2024. Brooklyn, Queens, and Staten Island each had the lowest number of shooting incidents for any year in recorded history. Now let's get into the full crime picture. Major crime in 2025 was down 3% citywide, with reductions in all 5 boroughs, including a nearly 4% decline in public housing. Can someone just get me a glass of water? All good, thank you. All good, thank you. Oops. Sorry, I had something in my throat. Thank you. Here, Chief. Make no mistake about it. These reductions are the product of our precision policing strategy, putting an unprecedented number of cops on the streets and in the neighborhoods, driving violence, including thousands of additional officers on foot posts and conducting targeted takedowns of the most violent gangs operating in our city. Last year alone, our Detective Bureau carried out 70 takedowns, resulting in the arrest of 390 gang members. You can see the impact of our zone strategy most clearly in the places that have historically experienced the most violent crime and where we have maintained permanent precision policing zones. Take the 2-5 precinct, which includes the 125th Street corridor. Major crime there dropped by 21%. Or the 110 and the 115 precincts, which cover Roosevelt Avenue, where major crime fell 24%. Now let's go through the 7 major crime categories. Citywide, murders declined 20% in 2025, with 77 fewer people murdered than 2024. And the declines deepened at the end of the year. In December, murders fell to 15 citywide, down nearly 38% from 2024. Alongside those reductions, our Detective Bureau has maintained a murder clearance rate of 69% in 2025. That citywide decline was driven by significant borough reductions. On Staten Island, murders fell by more than 60% in 2025. Manhattan was down 33%, Brooklyn was down 24%, and the Bronx was down 18%. Robbery declined nearly 10% citywide in 2025, a reduction of more than 1,600 incidents year over year. In 2025, burglaries fell nearly 4% citywide. That decline accelerated at the end of the year, down more than 15% in December and 10% in the fourth quarter. Grand larceny declined nearly 2% citywide in 2025. While this category remains one of the city's most persistent challenges, the full year numbers show continued progress as well. Auto theft declined 5% citywide in 2025, with a nearly 8% drop in the fourth quarter compared to 2024. That late year decline reflects early progress from our work with auto manufacturers, including targeted efforts with companies like Honda to address vulnerabilities and disrupt theft patterns before vehicles are stolen. Felony assault remained virtually flat for the year. The overall picture on felony assaults is shaped by 2 important dynamics. First, assaults on public sector employees, which include police officers, increased by roughly 25% last year, a serious and unacceptable trend that reflects the risks our officers continue to face in the line of duty. Second, domestic violence continues to drive a significant share of felony assaults, accounting for nearly 40% of these crimes citywide. The NYPD made fundamental changes at the end of last year to how these domestic violence cases are handled. In October, we created the Domestic Violence Unit within the Detective Bureau, a survivor-centered, trauma-informed approach that places specialized investigators in every precinct. It ensures continuity from complaint through prosecution, and it brings consistency and accountability to cases that demand it. Citywide, rapes were up 16%, largely due to a state law that went into effect in September 2024, which rightfully broadened the legal definition of rape to capture the full range of these crimes. Within that increase, domestic violence-related rapes rose by 25% and now account for roughly half of all reported rape cases citywide. That's why domestic violence cases, including sexual violence, are now being handled through the NYPD's Domestic Violence Unit with the focused attention that they require. I am looking forward to that starting to pay dividends in 2026. And progress extended into our transit system. 2025 was the safest year on our subways outside of the pandemic years since 2009. For 6 consecutive months, major crime on the subway system fell, contributing to a 4% drop over the course of the year. Transit robberies reached their lowest levels ever in 2025, even when you include the pandemic years, down 12% compared to 2024. And for the year, shooting incidents on our subways were down a remarkable 63%. Put simply, on a system that serves around 4 million riders on an average weekday, there were fewer than 6 major crimes per day. These results don't make the transit system safer, they make it feel safer too. A recent poll conducted by the MTA found that nearly 7 out of 10 subway riders say they feel safe using the system. That is an increase of 12 percentage points from the beginning of the year. That shift reflects what riders are seeing: more officers on trains and platforms, and a consistent focus on maintaining order where transit crime most often occurs. And none of this happens without partnership. The progress that we have made in the subway system was supported by the sustained commitment of Governor Hochul, whose investment in transit safety has strengthened our ability to deploy officers where they matter most and sustain these gains over time. Beyond the transit system, we applied that same disciplined, data-driven strategy to crimes that directly affect daily life, including retail theft. Retail theft is a recidivist-driven crime that spiked in the early 2020s, and communities across the city felt the impact in very real ways, from everyday items like toothpaste being locked behind cases to local businesses struggling to stay open. We heard that concern clearly from residents, workers, and store owners. In 2025, we responded with focus and with urgency. Retail theft declined by 14% citywide. That turnaround followed a clear strategy. We identified the patterns driving retail theft. We concentrated resources at high-propensity locations during peak hours, and we shifted from pass-through enforcement to sustained investigation. As a result, nearly half of all retail theft complaints resulted in an arrest, the highest rate since 2019. While we have made historic gains generally fighting violent crime, we have not turned the tide yet on youth violence. In 2025, 14% of shooting victims were under the age of 18, an increase of 5 percentage points from 2024. And 18% of shooting perpetrators were also under the age of 18. These are the highest percentages that we've ever seen for both measures since we began tracking this data in 2018. That reality demanded a change in approach. That is why this fall, we implemented school safety zones, modeled after our violence reduction zones, but designed specifically to keep kids safe. These zones focus on the places where young people are most likely to fall victim to a crime: commuter corridors, bus stops, and the routes students take to and from school. And the early results are significant. Since September, within these zones, overall crime was down 53%, and shooting incidents and shooting victims are down there more than 75%. We also changed our strategy with school safety agents, including deployments in and around schools. And the results there were striking too. School-related enforcement is down 21%, and school-related crime is down 22%. Get another sip of water. Thank you. Sorry. Okay. All right. Addressing youth violence isn't the work of one unit, one agency, or one solution. It requires all of us, families, schools, communities, elected officials, and law enforcement, playing our part to keep young people safe. The same is true when it comes to transportation safety. You often hear transportation safety discussed in the context of other agencies, and they deserve so much credit. But I want to brag for a moment about the NYPD's role. Traffic fatalities reached historic lows last year, falling 19% from 2024, and to the lowest total ever recorded in New York City's history. That progress is the result of focused enforcement, particularly against the behaviors that put lives at risk, including drunk and impaired driving. Through sustained DWI enforcement and targeted deployments, NYPD officers are taking dangerous drivers off the road. Last year, DWI arrests were up 15% compared to 2024. Safety in our streets depends not only on enforcement, but on our own judgment. In February, the NYPD updated its vehicle pursuit policy to limit pursuits to the most serious and dangerous crimes. The impact was immediate. Last year, vehicle pursuits dropped by more than 60% compared to 2024. Just as important, the risks associated with pursuits declined sharply as well. Fatalities fell by more than 80%, collisions dropped by nearly 50%, and injuries were cut almost in half. Next, quality of life. Since April, our quality of life teams have been responding to the daily issues eroding people's sense of safety, specifically as they were reported through the 311 system. That work is happening against a backdrop of sharply increased demand. Since 2019, 311 calls have increased by 104%. Even with that surge, citywide response times for chronic quality of life issues improved by an average of 22 minutes in 2025. Service times dropped by more than 14%, and contact resolutions through 311 increased by more than 16%. In 2025, hate crimes declined 12% citywide. Anti-Semitic incidents also declined, down 3% year over year, but they still accounted for 330 cases, representing 57% of all hate crimes reported in New York City, despite Jewish New Yorkers making up roughly 10% of the city's population. These numbers remain far too high, and anti-Semitism continues to be the most persistent hate threat that we face. The NYPD will continue to confront hate crimes aggressively and protect every community targeted because of who they are. The results that I have just described are extraordinary on their own. They are even more extraordinary when you reflect on where this department stood just a year ago. A crisis of leadership, a department plagued by scandal at the top, and public confidence deeply shaken. And yet, through it all, the men and women of the NYPD kept doing the work New Yorkers depend on. They met the standard, they upheld their responsibilities, and they delivered remarkable results that speak for themselves. That kind of work matters, and people noticed. In 2025, the NYPD hired more than 4,000 officers across four academy classes, making this the largest hiring year on record and bringing us virtually to the department's authorized headcount. That kind of growth does not happen by chance. It happens when a profession earns the confidence of the city that it serves, and when people see this work as something worth stepping forward for. And despite what critics say, this year the NYPD did not experience an unexpected or extreme wave of departures. Retirements were exactly as we projected at the beginning of the year. Resignations before pension eligibility are down more than 40% since 2022, and in 2025, we outpaced attrition by more than 800 officers. Our officers are the ones doing this work on the streets, but the direction of this department is set by its extraordinary leadership. I want New Yorkers to know that they are served by an incredible executive staff at the NYPD, including highly skilled civilian leaders and thoughtful and honorable uniformed chiefs led by our chief of department, Chief LaPetri, our crime strategist extraordinaire. As someone who has been in and around the NYPD for 18 years, I can say without hesitation that this is the finest group of policing professionals that I have been privileged to work with. The historic reductions we've shared today did not happen by chance. They are the product of a department that confronts reality as it is, identifying the challenges in front of us, developing strategies to meet them, and executing those strategies with discipline and with precision. That approach is deliberate. It is precision policing, a data-driven, scalpel approach that focuses effort where they matter most. It means putting officers where crime is actually happening, when it is happening, and staying there long enough to make systemic change. But all of this is only possible because of the men and women of the NYPD. It shows up in the decisions that they make on the streets, in investigations carried to their conclusion, and in the quiet consistency required to hold the line across a city this large and this complex. I want to be clear. As the year turns, our crime-fighting posture remains unchanged. The standard we set for ourselves remains high, and the commitment to support the men and women who do this work remains absolute. With that, I will now turn it over to Mayor Mamdani. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. It is a privilege to be here with you at One Police Plaza and to be surrounded by so many committed public servants here in the NYPD. I want to thank Commissioner Tisch for her leadership and Governor Hochul for her steadfast partnership with the city. I will not repeat the incredible statistics that the Commissioner just shared, but I do want to echo the human story that they tell. Because as impressive as these numbers are, we know that they capture something tangible. The lives New Yorkers live, the ways that our neighbors interact with our city, and the countless hours of unseen hard work by the men and women in this room and beyond it that have delivered this progress. When we say that murder went down by over 20% from last year, that is anything but abstract. Each of those percentage points adds up to dining room tables without an empty seat, lives free from the dark cloud of grief, children that grow up with a parent at home. When we talk about the safest year on subways absent the pandemic year since 2009, we are talking about a city that is and feels safe to explore, where a young New Yorker from Inwood isn't afraid to ride a train to meet her friends in Flushing, where a senior citizen on the Upper West Side isn't reluctant to get on the subway to see a grandchild in Bushwick. These numbers, whether they represent fewer robberies or fewer victims of gun violence, mean a more vibrant, joyful city. It's measured in restaurants and bodegas that keep their doors open later, families that don't hurry home as soon as the light begins to fade from the sky. But make no mistake, none of this arrives by accident. Each of these markers of achievement is a testament to a police department that cares about this city and works with this city to remake this city. Thank you to those who are here at One Police Plaza and to those across our 5 boroughs for the work that you all do in making today possible. As we lead together, I want to see these numbers continue to drop, to continue to nurture the partnership between the NYPD and the communities across the city, and to empower our police force to focus on the serious crimes that they signed up to tackle. We are going to mend the frayed social safety net that fails so many of our neighbors, tackle the mental health crisis that causes so much pain, and continue to deliver public safety across our 5 boroughs. I want to say thank you again to everyone who worked so hard to bring us this day, and thank you for all of the work we will continue to do to lead together over the years to come. And with that, I will pass it over to our partner, our Governor, Kathy Hochul.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for reminding us of the humanity that is involved here when our men and women in uniform go out and save lives and prevent crimes and solve crimes. There are real people whose lives are not shattered. There's families not spending the holidays in an emergency room waiting for hopefully some positive news, or the continuation of therapy that's required, mental health and physical therapy when people are victims of crime. So yes, there's a very human story behind these numbers that we don't want to have lost, but these numbers are nothing short of extraordinary. I want to thank Commissioner Tisch for providing the leadership that this department has needed, and the executive team that responds to that leadership so forcefully, so successfully, and all the people who are out there on our streets and in our subways and our neighborhoods who now feel that sense of pride again of being a member of the NYPD. That is a direct tribute to you, your philosophy, your way you're empowering others to do what they know how to do, and I thank all of you for that. And so we can talk about the numbers again. I'm not going to repeat them all, but I do want to say these reductions in crime that we're talking about today, and we are, again, as a football fan, we are not spiking the football because we always know that something could change. But today is a milestone, something we could not have foreseen, I believe, 4 years ago when I first became governor. We were in the depths of a crime crisis throughout the nation, not just
You've been
New York,
watching Mayor
not just
Mamdani,
New York City,
NYPD
but
Commissioner
across the
Tisch, and
nation.
Governor
But we
Hochul
were
giving
besieged
public
by
safety
crime.
update. They say the
Shootings
city
have
hit
doubled in just a
record
couple
low
of
crime
years.
levels in
Repeat
2025.
offenders are
We'll have
routinely
more
being
on their
stormed free
announcements in just a few
of
minutes.
crimes again.
Good morning and welcome to CBS
Things were
News New York
ransacking
at
our
11
local
a.m. We are
businesses
streaming
and
live with your top stories of the day.
just felt
Let's turn
so
things over to
unsafe.
meteorologist Tony
And it
Sadiku and our first alert forecast. Tony.
Hey, good morning, Cindy. So we're still waiting for a little bit of sunshine. I don't see a ton today, but despite the clouds, temperatures are moving. Look at this, 41 degrees now as you look live with me. And I know it's gray and some of you are still in the 30s, but hey, this is progress from where we were earlier. We woke up in the 20s. Now we're above freezing everywhere. Exception is Walden where it's 32. That's going to be key to our forecast later this evening as a system tries to work in here. That could lead to some freezing rain, which could mean slick travel later tonight. But this is an upgrade. Temperatures compared to this time yesterday, you get 5-6 degrees. You're moving in the right direction. And I think we'll keep that trend going this afternoon. Even though we don't see a ton more warmth from where we are right now, it's still a decent day. Clouds may give way to some sun in parts of the area. And then look at the numbers holding steady right through midnight tonight. So it doesn't get much colder once the sun goes down. But it is going to be cold enough for our northwestern suburbs. You're thinking Sullivan, you're thinking Ulster, you're thinking Dutchess County, where we have to be mindful of the threat for freezing rain, which this time of year, when we talk about this, saying this is one of the biggest hazards. So while it's not going to be a huge, huge storm, we'll time out that threat when I see you in just a bit.
Tony, thank you. Breaking news, the mayor of Piscataway says 4 people are dead following a police-involved shooting at a home. The dead include a man who was shot by police, his mother, and his 2 grandparents. The mayor says the man's father called 911 reporting his son was armed with a machete. Police say they gave multiple commands for the man to drop the weapon and even deployed a taser, but he did not comply. We spoke with the resident who heard several gunshots ring out and then witnessed a massive police response.
Just like a nice, normal family. It's like a weird situation to be in because you're in your home where you're supposed to be safe, and they're in their home where they're supposed to be safe. So.
The PBA says the officers involved in the shooting are being evaluated. We're still waiting to learn more information, including the identity of the victims and the suspect. Now to a developing story. 5 firefighters are hurt after a 5-alarm fire in Queens that engulfed an apartment building. Elijah Westbrook was there as the FDNY gave an update and has more from the scene.
Good morning. Well, right now we are reporting from a scene that is huge and still very much so active. Let me step out of the way so you can see what we're talking about at this time. As we pan up to the roof, you can see fire crews